and welcome to Macros with Mythili, where we take a hard look at all the major macroeconomic issues and challenges before the nation. But these are not very normal times. The world economy, India included, seems to be at the crossroads. All the rules, at least of macroeconomics, seem to have broken down. As the gap between the developed and the developing world looks set to widen rather than converge, and things like climate change loom large, we take this opportunity of yet another Gandhi Jayanti to look at the alternate forms of development, in particular at Gandhian economics. At one level, Gandhi's economics might seem quite otherworldly, much like his Satyagraha movement when he launched it. But are there any aspects of Gandhian economics that we could apply to the 21st century world, with happier outcomes for all? To discuss this, we have a distinguished panel. Professor Chiranjib Sen from the Azim Premji University, Bangalore, who has done considerable work on Gandhian economics, Professor Deepak Nayyar, formerly Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India and Vice Chancellor, Delhi University, and Tushar Gandhi, a great-grandson of the father of the nation, who also runs the Mahatma Gandhi Foundation. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Tushar, if I may start with you, as a person who's perhaps been most closely involved with Gandhian thinking, is 21st century modern capitalism, with all its talk of, globalization, environmental degradation, is it the very antithesis of all that Gandhian economics stood for? Have we strayed very far away from Gandhian thinking? And is there any way we can resurrect it and, as I said, make the outcome happier for all of us concerned?
I think when the darkness is at its deepest, even a spark gives hope. And so I think at this time when on one hand we are enjoying the benefits of consumerism and materialistic pursuits and all that, at the other hand, the ill effects of that kind of a lifestyle and that kind of a belief or philosophy to live by are also becoming very apparent and are becoming pretty critical to our survival. And at those points, I have always seen that we turn towards the alternative. Like, in times of crisis, we turn towards God. And so I believe that there is a very strong growing movement that is going towards what Bapu had said would be the ideal way of life. You look at the local movement where, they're advocating use of local produce, or they're setting up radiuses that they will only go up to in their requirements, for their requirements and things. Those are basically fancy new terms for Swadeshi as he had propounded it during his time. Terms may change, but the philosophy remains the same, because it wasn't even his invention. Bapu did not invent those things. He just adopted those from our age-old wisdom and our age-old ways of life on which civilization was born. So I think on one hand, as rampant materialism grows, I think Gandhian philosophy and the model of Gandhian economics is also there to stay.
Chiranjib, rampant materialism, is it here to stay? Can we do anything about it at all? And you've written a paper on how, Gandhian thinking, does it have a place at all in the era of globalization? A very fundamental aspect of Gandhian thinking was about village self-sufficiency. Is it possible at all in the globalized world to talk of self-sufficient villages? Is it naive? Is it idealistic? Or is it possible at all?
Well, Gandhiji was a radical thinker, and his recommendations were very radical both in the political space as well as in the economic field. Now, what he said about what specific things have to be done was said more than 100 years ago, and I don't think we should expect that his specific recommendations, like the charkha and so on and so forth, are relevant today, in today's world. But the basic principles that he upheld, the basic philosophy that he propounded, that is as relevant as ever. First of all, the flaws that he detected in industrialism and commercialization have proved to be very, very long-standing. I mean, if you look around the world and see what's wrong, virtually all the major problems that are wrong, he had noted. So, alienation of people, marginalization of people, environmental disaster, etc. Now, you ask the question whether he's relevant, and I would say yes, he's relevant, but he's relevant in the sense of providing an alternative economic ideology to what is prevailing right now. First of all, in today's world, because of all the troubles that was just mentioned, the standard ideology of market fundamentalism and even Keynesian mixed economy type of thinking are jaded. But many people are returning to the foundational messages that he gave, and Gandhiji was fundamentally a spiritualist. Even in his approach to economics, he wanted to root economics in its spiritual foundations, and that's highly radical. Whether how much people will follow that remains to be seen, but it stands like a beacon. And among the things that you mentioned, I will mention four things about his approach. First of all, he had something to say about the ethical basis of economic activity, and he had a particular idea as to whether or not economic activities is all for consumption, all for material well-being, and he clearly rejected that. And his approach to economic activity, the foundational basis of economic activity, he was very concerned about the fundamental inner motivation of why people do what they do. And so he believed in a kind of freedom, not the kind of freedom that Amartya Sen is talking about in terms of capabilities, in the same spirit but different from that. Certainly not the spirit of freedom that Milton Friedman talks about, not even what Karl Marx talks about. In the case of Gandhiji, he was talking about freedom that is transcending material attachment.
Chiranjib, let me just interrupt you there and turn to Dr. Nayyar at this stage to ask him, you spoke of economics, spirituality, ethics. Are these very alien words, Dr. Nayyar, in today's world? Ethics, economics, spirituality, economics. How far have we stayed away from those basic values?
I think we need to recognize that Gandhi was a political thinker and a social philosopher. He was not an economist, yet a lot of his thinking about the Indian national movement, the whole idea of Swadeshi, was driven by the politics of his struggle for independence. Yet there is much that we can learn from Gandhi. I think in terms of economics and ethics. I don't believe that there is much compatibility, at least in my world, between economics and spirituality. Now, if we think of Gandhi, his writings, we would see instantly that he was concerned with the microcosm and not with the macrocosm. So he was concerned with the well-being of people, with the eradication of poverty, with the dignity of human beings, with a sense of community, with a sense of society. And therefore, to return to the question you asked about economics and ethics, it's not new in economics. Adam Smith, in his theory of moral sentiments, wrote about sympathy as the foundation of market economies, which is about trust, about reciprocity, about social norms, about sympathy for each other. And this is something we have lost, not just in modern thinking about economics, but in people's perceptions of economics. So that as market economies turn into market societies, a kind of culture of materialism has captured our imagination. And therefore, I think that Mahatma Gandhi's writings in the domain of economics are a reality check for us. They provide checks and balances in this era of markets and globalization. Whether it is about the pursuit of private profit that leads to environmental degradation, whether it is about a culture of materialism that excludes others and does not care, or whether it is about everyone for himself, the rational economic man or woman, and may the devil take the hindmost. I think it's this sense of individuals not being rational profit maximizers or utility maximizers, but as responsible citizens or part of a society or part of our community, that to me is the most important takeaway from Mr. Gandhi's writings.
So there are many important takeaways, and the problem really is that practice has gone far removed from theory today. But on that note, I'm afraid we'll have to slip into a very short break, but we'll be back very soon, so please do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Macros with Mythili, and we are discussing the relevance of Gandhian thinking in today's 21st century capitalism. Tushar, if I can turn to you once again, Gandhi had this very idealistic notion of businessmen and corporates being trustees for society as a whole. In a day and age where corporates are looking only at their bottom line, is it meaningful at all to talk about trusteeship? Is the cooperative movement perhaps the closest to trusteeship that we can hope for, or is it not possible at all?
Well, Bapu not only talked about trusteeship in corporates or trusteeship of wealth, he talked about trusteeship of knowledge, trusteeship of ability, trusteeship of time. He said beyond a certain level, anything was more than required for personal consumption, had to be utilized for the good of the society. He wasn't against personal wealth. He said, yes, you're welcome to your personal wealth, but there has to be a point beyond which you don't require it anymore for yourself. You've achieved everything you have, and then beyond that, the wealth that you create, or the inventions that you create, or the time you have, must be spent for the betterment of society. And if in doing that, people who are not able to are not equipped with such abilities benefit, then that is not bad. What I can't understand is a corporate captain needing one plane. Yes, I can understand that. But why does one individual require a fleet of 10 planes at his or her disposal? I can't imagine that they travel in parts, kind of thing. And so that is consumption beyond requirement. That is greed. That is pandering to the ego of the person. And when that happens, that is a crime against society. And that is what Bapu cautioned us against, because when consumption goes beyond certain limit, it turns to lust, and then that lust has absolutely no limitations, and it becomes a crime. And then you must also understand that Bapu's economics was based on the welfare of what he very affectionately called Daridra Narayan, the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weak. And he believed that whatever we did, it would be good only if it made a difference to the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weak, in making them self-reliant, not making them parasites on society, but in making them self-reliant. And so the basis, the cornerstone of his economy was to start from the lowest strata and move up to in a natural progression. Whereas today they are all talking about creating wealth at the top and hoping there's a trickle-down effect, but it never trickles down, because the next 747 is always on the want list.
Chiranjib, Tushar just spoke about the dangers of greed, and it is a fact that Gandhiji spoke about there being enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Now, you've been teaching at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, before you moved to Azim Premji University. How far do modern managers really believe in this, or do they believe it is greed that drives the world? Because only then will you constantly be striving for higher profits, higher growth, and as Tushar mentioned, hope for the trickle down to happen.
No, I think that that certainly is a kind of a counter trend. And apart from just students, of course, they tend to be more idealistic when they're young. I would say that Gandhi's relevance can be seen in the present day emphasis on corporate social responsibility. As at a time when the governments are withdrawing all over the world, the many spaces have opened up where attention is needed. And we do have a fairly global movement, and it's not completely new, but I think it's becoming more important, which is corporate social responsibility, and that's it's something that is on a rising trend, and I think that certainly can that Gandhiji's vision is important. But what he would have said is that he would believe in a CSR, in a corporate social responsibility, where the motivation is clean, where you really want to do it because you want to do good. I think Gandhi never shied away from the idea of goodness and the necessity and need and possibility of goodness in everybody, including the capitalist, including the businessman. So therefore, he would be opposed to a functional interpretation and strategic instrumental interpretation of CSR. Will you do it as a kind of public relations? But you would be definitely in support of, and people who do it are actually pushing his agenda forward when you have cases of genuine corporate social responsibility. So I would say that not only are young students, many of them are motivated, many of them are doing many things, also companies, but as in many of these things there are counter tendencies. There is a right way of doing it, a Gandhian way of doing it, a spiritually uplifting way of doing it, and a non-uplifting way of doing it. And if the motivation of the company is not pure, then even the good thing that you do is tainted. I mean, think of this situation with Satyam, where Mr. Raju is supposed to have had been a good person in his younger days. His company has done many important things in CSR, but when it was discovered that he was that all the scams surfaced, even the good that was done lost its value. So in CSR, it's very important that CSR be actually backed by ethical practices within the company. It can't be done for show. And I think this return to morality is one of the tendencies in the system. I can't say it's a dominant tendency, but certainly is one of the positive things that are happening at a time when the governments are withdrawing from the social space.
Dr. Nayyar, I think both Tushar as well as Chiranjib talked about goodness, morality, but we are living in an age where every day we are assailed by reports of the 2G scam, the telecom scam, the coal scam. So does it sound a little odd to even talk about goodness, morality? Where is it all?
You know, I think we need to accept that for Gandhiji, the idea of trusteeship in capitalism was a hope, not a belief. Because he himself said there is enough in the world for everybody's need, but there cannot be enough in the world for everybody's greed. Now, I don't agree with this notion of trusteeship, because capitalism is about the pursuit of profit. Capitalism is not the business of charity or philanthropy. And corporate social responsibility that Chiranjib stressed is really a charity of the rich for the poor. I believe that we cannot hide behind CSR and have the state abdicate its role of providing social protection, of providing socialization of risk to people. And therefore, in a sense, there is a danger this could become a cop-out plea. I would underline and stress Gandhiji's concerns about dignity, about employment, about environment, that it is, for him, it was for the community to provide and the trustees to provide. But I think there is a very important role for the state, for the government, to meet the basic human needs of people. And if Gandhiji had lived in the early 20th century, he might have agreed with me, as he would have seen the avarice of the corporate sector.
So Gandhiji did believe in a welfare state. But on that note, I'm afraid we'll have to slip into another short break, but please do bear with us. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. You're watching Macros with Mythili, and we're discussing the relevance of Gandhian thinking in a week of Gandhi Jayanti. Does it have any relevance at all to modern capitalism? Tushar, we're into our last segment, so I'd just like to ask you, can you think of just 2 or 3 ideas that Gandhi believed in, which are still possible, practical, and we can implement them in today's world?
Well, I think his emphasis on manual labor is still practicable in a country like India, where human resources are greatest wealth. You know, if you look at industry today and modernization and things, you see it going into mechanization and automation completely, and negating the human power. And yet, although Chiranjib says the charkha is outdated, I believe in a country like India, the charkha can still be the tool of regeneration in a country which can't provide quality electricity in almost, what, 40% of the country still, and I think I'm being conservative on that. A manually operated charkha could still provide means of employment to people and means of creating a sustainable system. And in the West, where their craving for ecological products and things, this could fill a niche market. It could become a very vital tool in creating enterprise and creating employment, which is one of the biggest issues that India faces today. And so I think that is very important. Delinking the economic health of the nation from its stock market indexes and linking it with the hunger index of the nation would be another ethical practice that should be adopted, which Bapu always talked about. He said, as long as a child goes to bed hungry, a country cannot be thought of as having developed or prospered. And so the Daridra Narayan approach to development comes in over there. And the third is, I think, I'll end with the talisman that he gave to young Indians at the time of independence. And he said, whenever you contemplate doing something and you question yourself on the rightness of that action, think of the face of the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weak person that you have come across, and question yourself honestly whether what you propose to do will make any difference in that person's life. And what is important over here is make that person self-reliant so that he breaks out of his situation and is able to live with dignity and honor. And if the answer comes back as yes, then be sure that what you contemplate doing is good.
Chiranjib, Tushar spoke about the need to create jobs in a country like ours, and he couldn't be more right. But is Charkha the way to go, or is rapid industrialization the only way to create jobs and lead to prosperity in the country? Is there a conflict between the two?
Well, I think that the balance between growth and employment is really a very live issue and very complex, cannot be immediately resolved. But I do believe in that Amartya Sen's approach of capability strengthening, which allows people to participate in the growth that might be occurring, is one way that is in conformity with Gandhiji's view. So I wouldn't say that create charkhas all over the place, but allow people to participate and deepen the idea of freedom. So that, I think, is probably more practical than trying to go directly for appropriate technology in today's world. But I'd like to, in my closing thing, I just want to say one other thing that's not really connected with what you asked, is that Gandhiji, one of the important things he mentioned and throughout is this movement for national self-respect. He really believed in moral upliftment. He believed in gaining self-respect, and he believed that as a society we can gain self-respect by watching out for everybody else. So one thing where we really need to go a lot in our country as we become wealthy is to begin to care about the public space, begin to identify with society, and not have this completely selfish approach which Gandhiji was completely opposed to. So collective self-respect can be attained by cleaning up the environment, by public cleanliness, by respect for fellow citizens. And so Gandhiji did lay the foundation for a deeper citizenship.
Dr. Nayyar, if I can turn to you and give you the last word. The fact is that Gandhi's political ideas had much greater acceptance and won much more recognition than his economic ideas. So in that kind of scenario, which economic ideas, if I were to ask you just 2 or 3 economic ideas, would you really think are worth trying out in today's world?
I think the importance of ethics and morality in economy and society, and I think the importance of doing away with poverty, hunger, illiteracy, deprivation. But for Gandhi, forgive me, economics was not separate from politics, and that was not separate from society. In fact, I recall what he wrote in Young India in 1926 about 7 deadly sins, that if you stayed away from them, there was a future for India, for young India. Wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, religion without sacrifice, politics without principle. And I think these ideas of Gandhi were interwoven. If we followed them, I think we would be better off not just in economy, but also in polity and society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nayyar. I think you couldn't have wrapped it up better for all of us, and I do hope all of us will introspect and think about what you have said. Thank you very much, Chiranjib, Tushar and Dr. Nayyar, for participating in this. Thank you also for watching. But we'll be back next week, same time, with yet another edition of Macros with Mythili. Till then, it's thank you and goodbye from all of us at ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.